Do you want to know more about IRS Form 2553? Then I want you to stick around till the end of today's conversation because I'll be giving you line by line instructions how and where to file Form 2553 election by a small business corporation. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show. How are you today? I hope you are doing fantastic. I'm doing marvelous, if you were to ask me. If you are doing as great as I am, go grab a cup of coffee or tea or vodka and let's roll. So today's conversation will revolve around Form 2553. What is it? Businesses must file Form 2553 with the IRS to elect to be taxed as an S corporation. So this form is due no later than 2 months and 15 days after the beginning of the tax year in which the election takes effect. So I want you to see right now we have a screenshot of the form on the screen, as well as the link, the IRS link, where you can actually download it. So after electing S corp status, the company is taxed as a pass-through entity. So the business's income and losses are reflected on the owner's personal tax returns. So you can have it delivered via private delivery services approved by the IRS, or you can actually e-file it. Now, you have a list of private delivery services on the IRS website, irs.gov/PDS. And some companies are able to save money on small business taxes by electing to be taxed as an S corporation. All right. So instead of the company paying a corporate tax, the owners of an S corp report business income on their personal tax return. So, AKA the whole pass-through taxation thing. All right. And I'm going to give you, now one thing I need to really talk about here is that when you form a new business entity, the IRS will tax you based on the default tax classification for that type of business. And I want you to see right now on the screen, the default tax classification for each type of entity: C Corp, single member LLC, multi-member LLC. So by default, sole proprietorships and general partnerships are regarded as pass-through entities for tax purposes. This means that business owners report their share of business income and losses on their personal tax returns. And by default, corporations are regarded as C corporations for tax purposes. Remember, a C corp pays a 21% corporate income tax on the business's net taxable income for the year. Shareholders also pay a dividend tax on any distributions from the corporation. That's why we have the whole concept of double taxation when you talk about C corporation. And LLCs can choose whether to be taxed as a pass-through entity or as a corporation. So the big question is, why would you file IRS Form 2553? By filing IRS Form 2553, you basically are electing to have your C corporation or LLC treated as an S corporation for federal tax purposes, only federal here, not state. S corporations are corporate entities like C corporation, right? Because, yeah, but they are taxed significantly differently. And one thing I want to also say here is that in 2019, when a series of business tax cuts took effect, owners of S corporation and other pass-through entities were given the option to deduct 20% of their net business income before taxes are calculated. That's the QBI, the Qualified Business Deduction, QBD. All right. And the thing here is that although tax obligations vary by business, C corporations tend to pay the highest taxes because they get hit with taxation twice. I already talked about that, right? The double taxation. So once at the corporate level, and again at the shareholder level for dividends. Who can file IRS Form 2553? Let's talk about that. Now, C corporations and LLCs can follow the Form 2553 instructions that I will be talking about later on in this show. If you have an LLC, filing this form will not completely change anything from a legal standpoint. Remember, an LLC is a state legal formation. It happens at the state level, all right? Because your company will still be an LLC. However, For federal tax purposes, you will be taxed as an S corporation. You are eligible to file Form 2553 if all of the following are true. All of these criteria must be true, all of them, not one or two or not three, no, all of them. So pay attention here. The company must be a domestic corporation. The company has a fewer than 100 shareholders and only one class of stock. Shares owned by family members can be treated as one shareholder. All shareholders must be individuals, estates, certain types of trust, and exempt organizations. For example, nonprofits. All shareholders must be U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or resident aliens. The company generally cannot be a bank, insurance company, or thrift savings institution. The company must adopt a calendar tax year ending December 31st or other eligible fiscal year. Each shareholder consents to S corporation status. You need to have collective consensus here. So if you meet all these requirements, your company can become an S corporation for federal tax purposes by following the instructions, the Form 2553 instructions that I'm going to give you very soon. And how do you actually, and this is the last part before we actually go to the actual instructions here. How do you file Form IRS Form 2553? IRS Form 2553. This is actually a 4-page form that contains information about a business and its shareholders. So the information you provide impacts whether the IRS will approve S corporation tax status and when the status will take effect. So part 1, please take a look right now on the screen here. We have screenshots for you, right? You can see them. So part 1, you have the election information. Please pay attention. So part 1 of this form, it asks basic information about your business, including the company's complete name, address, and employer identification number, if applicable. And you should also provide the date and state in which your business was incorporated or registered. In item E, if you can see on the screen here, in item E of part 1, you want to enter the date on which you want your S corporation tax election to take effect. And you want to pay careful attention to filing deadlines. Very important, folks. In most cases, you must file Form 2553 no later than 2 months and 15 days after the effective date of S corporation election. If you have a new business and are electing S corporation tax status for your very first tax year, you want to put down the earliest of those dates in item E: the date the business first acquired assets, the date that business transactions commenced, or the date that shareholders were first acquired. In part 1, you also want to specify your fiscal year or calendar year, as well as the contact information for your business attorney or business officer that the IRS should contact for more information. This liaison contact info is very important, folks. And late filers should provide an explanation for the delay in part 1. So you can just write a short explanatory note that really delineates why you are late. And the last section of part 1 contains a table. I want you to see it right now. You can see right now on the screen. And this table has a row documenting each shareholder's consent to S corporation tax treatment. Remember, I was telling you that all shareholders must consent to S corp status. All right. So you will need each shareholder's name and address, social security number, tax ID or tax ID, tax year start and end, and the number of shares or a percentage of ownership. And there is space for only 7 shareholders. So if you have more, you want to attach an extra sheet with the same columns of information. An officer of the company, such as the company's president, must sign at the end of part 1. Signature is very important. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another section of the Awesome Sweet Kiwi Show, folks. We're still having a conversation. I'm giving you line-by-line instructions for Form 2553. And part 2 here, we have a selection of fiscal tax year. And you can see on the screen right now, it's on the screen. And most companies follow a fiscal year of January 1st to December 31st, right? This is just a classic fiscal year. Now, a fiscal year or a tax year is generally an annual period used for accounting and tax purposes. So if your company's fiscal year does not end on December 31st, then you have to fill out Part 2 of IRS Form 2553 that you currently have on the screen. So in Part 2, you essentially provide a justification to the IRS of why they should allow you to use a non-calendar tax year. And let me give you a few scenarios when non-calendar tax years make sense for certain types of businesses. So number one, we have natural business year. So some seasonal businesses follow a natural business year that culminates with a slow period for the company. For example, a boating company might have a fiscal year spanning from October 1st to September 30th because revenue decreases significantly after the summer season. That's the first criterion. Another criterion is ownership tax year. So some businesses follow a fiscal year based on the preferences of a majority of shareholders, and this is called an ownership tax year. The third criterion, business purpose tax year. So there might be another business purpose that leads you to select a non-calendar for a non-calendar tax year for your company. Just make sure that you explain exactly to the IRS what that is. And the last criterion here is something called Section 444 tax year. And Section 444 of the tax code lets businesses choose a fiscal year ending on specific dates if the business makes periodic tax payments throughout the year. So you want to use item P in Part 2 to indicate if you are using the natural business year or ownership tax year test. And item Q is for companies with another business purpose. And companies using business purpose to justify their fiscal year will have to pay a $5,800 fee after filing IRS Form 2553. And you want to use item R to indicate a Section 444 fiscal year. Let's move on now to Part 3, Qualified Subchapter S Trust Election. This is an interesting one, and I want you to look at it right now on the screen here, folks. All right, so Part 3 of IRS Form 2553 does not apply to most small businesses. However, we really thought about covering it here just because it could be relevant to some people. So a qualified subchapter S trust that wants to hold stock in an S corporation must fill out Part 3 of IRS Form 2553. And a qualified subchapter S trust is a type of trust with a single beneficiary. So income from the trust is distributed at least on an annual basis. So just want to show it right now. This is how it looks like. You have it on the screen here. And Part 4, we have late corporate classification election representations. So you actually can skip Part 4 unless your company is a limited liability company that is filing IRS Form 2553 after the deadline. So if you're late, then yes, you can file this part. You can fill in this part. If not, just skip it. So if this section does apply to you, then by signing IRS Form 2553, you are agreeing with the representations shown in Part 4. Don't forget to explain your reason for late filing to the IRS, either in line 1 of Part 1 or in a separate attached statement. This part is very important, and I cannot emphasize this part enough. You want to explain to the agency why you're late, and please make sure that you go straight to the point, and you can attach not just the statements, but if you have other evidentiary elements, if you have other proof that backs up what you are saying, then you want to attach it also. The bottom line here is that you want to avoid any penalty or fee from the IRS or any kind of disciplinary action from the agency. All right, so very important. So late corporate classification election representations, and the same applies to the qualified subchapter S trust election. If you're late, you still want to justify why that is. Okay. I want to talk now about by when should you file Form 2553. What is the regulations in terms of deadlines? So the deadline to file Form 2553 is actually 2 months and 15 days after the start of the tax year in which you want the election to take effect. So established businesses can also file anytime during the preceding tax year. So that means that no later than March 15th for most businesses, but deadlines can differ for new companies and companies that follow a non-calendar tax year, right? So let me give you a few examples of IRS Form 2553 deadlines. For an established business, so if your business has been around for a while, then you have already filed taxes at least once. So let's say you want to change your tax status to S corporation starting January 1st, 2021 or 2022. So you have for 2021, if you want to change your tax status starting January 1st, 2021, you have until March 15, 2021 to file IRS Form 2553. You can also file the form anytime during 2020. The same applies for 2022. So if you want to get that status on January 1st, 2022, then you have until March 15, 2022 to file the form. Well, what about new business? If you have a new business, then you won't have any previous tax filings. Let's say you have a new business whose tax year starts January 1st, 2021. Your IRS Form 2553 would be due by March 15, 2021, but you can't file before January 1st. What about a seasonal business? Let's say you have a seasonal business and your tax year starts October 1st. Your IRS Form 2553 will be due by December 15. That's 75 days. So no matter your specific deadline, filing IRS Form 2553 on time is important if you want to take advantage of S Corp tax treatment for a specific tax year. If you file too late, you might have to wait one more year for the election to take effect. All right. So one thing I want to say is that if you miss the filing deadline, there is something called IRS Form 2553 late filing relief. All is not lost, folks. You can still obtain S corporation status for the common tax year if you can show a reasonable cause for the delay. So I think I mentioned that earlier. So your explanation for the delay can be provided on line 1 of IRS Form 2553 or an attached statement or on an attached statement, right? So to receive a pass from the IRS, shareholders should act like an S corporation from the date the S corp status was to take effect. For instance, shareholders should have reported business income and losses on their personal tax returns. And note that you will see mention of IRS Form 8832 in the instructions to IRS Form 2553, right? And Form 8832 is for LLCs that want to be taxed as a C corporation, and for other businesses that want to change their tax classification. So IRS Form 2553 is specifically for LLCs and C corporations that want to elect S Corp tax status. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks. So we are still talking about the Form 2553 line by line instructions. And where do you file IRS Form 2553? So filing options for IRS Form 53 include you can mail or you can fax. You cannot file this form online. You cannot e-file the form. So 2553, you can only mail or fax. So based on your business's principal business location, you want to use the address or fax numbers that we're going to put right now on the screen. Please pay attention here. We're going to leave it on the screen for a while. So make sure you double check the IRS website because addresses and fax numbers can change periodically. And this was as of February 2020. So it's pretty accurate. And be sure to send in your original form if you're filing by mail. If you opt for fax, store the original copy of the form in a safe place. All right, so we're gonna leave this again on the whether you wanna send it to the Kansas City agency or the Ogden, Utah agency. And after submitting IRS Form 2553, you can actually expect to hear a response back from the IRS within 60 days, and you want to add on an additional 90 days if you use a business purpose fiscal year. The IRS will tell you if they have accepted or rejected your request for S Corp tax status. So once you make an election, it stays in effect until your company dissolves or changes tax status again. And if you terminate or revoke S Corp status, you generally cannot reapply for S Corporation tax treatment for 5 years. And the cool thing here is there is no fee. There is no fee to submit Form 2553, but in specific situations, the IRS will assess a fee. Let me give you an example. If you select a non-calendar tax year based on a specific business purpose, and I think I spoke about that on part 3, item Q, you will be assessed a $5,800 fee. And this fee should not be sent, you should not send in with the IRS Form 2553, however. You will receive a separate bill from the IRS instructing you how to pay. And in some cases, an S-Corp elections filed at the IRS deadline will also incur a late fee. This is why I was speaking to you earlier about the importance of the explanation. All right, folks. This is it for today's conversation. What is the takeaway here? What is, we've been talking for 10, 15 minutes here, and what is the takeaway? Remember that you don't have to elect a tax status for your business entity. Everything about Form 2553 is optional. Very important. So you don't have to elect a tax status. The IRS automatically taxes businesses based on their default tax classification. However, if you want to take advantage of S-Corp tax status, then you have to file Form 2553 with the IRS. All right, so based on the instructions that I just gave you, it shouldn't be really, filling out this form shouldn't be too difficult, right? And if you have questions or are unable to get through the form yourself, we really suggest hiring a tax attorney or a CPA or an EA. And they can help you, and they will help you complete and file the form on your behalf. All right, folks, let's do a quick recap here. So today I spoke to you about what is Form 2553, why would you file the form, who can file the form, how do you file the form. I gave you step-by-step instructions, and when do you have to file it, and where do you have to file it. All right, have a wonderful time, happy filing, and I will see you next time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.